there is a 20 years old conversation in the Israeli ecosystem about how to increase the participation of the Israeli population in the tech ecosystem. Despite all the news and despite all the, what we like to think of ourselves as a startup nation, there is a glass ceiling in the number of employees that actually working in tech. It was hovering around 7%, 8%, and still around this number. It's like 9% of the workforce in Israel actually works in tech.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Lomitech, and sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and Birthright Excel. Welcome to another episode of 20-Minute Leaders. I'm joined today by Shahar Cohen, the founder and CEO of Lucid Capital. Shahar, a software engineer by training, has served in executive product and strategy positions at tech in Israel and Silicon Valley. Several years ago, he founded Lucid Capital, a tech fund that specializes in global tech stocks as well as late-stage startups. Lucid Capital is a close partner of the leading Israeli institutional investors and assists them in accessing and qualifying direct tech investments, both on the global public markets as well as the private ones. Shahar Cohen, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. How are you?
Thank you. Hi, Michael. How are you? Very good.
I'm great. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to dive deep into these 20 minutes into a few key understandings that you've had throughout your career. You've had an incredible career, whether it's head of product marketing with Cisco back in the Valley. You've invested in some of the most incredible companies like Rapid and Trigo, and really companies that are at the foundation of the Israeli ecosystem. And now, most recently, the co-founder and CEO of Lucid Capital, and working with some amazing people on some really great problems and thinking strategically about our ecosystem here in Israel, globally, and where we're headed. And I'm excited to dive deep into a few of those key insights. But before we do all that, take me back just a little bit. And who are you? What makes up Shahar Cohen, the thinker, today?
Yeah, so first, I always describe myself as a lucid geek. I'm a geek. I am a bachelor of computer science. I was in my dark past. I was software engineer at Intel, and some of my best friends are still, software engineer. They're now VP R&Ds and stuff. So I grew up with a very solid tech, I would say, roots, and then I transitioned into the business, into the intersection between business and tech. Did some strategy roles in both the giants like HP and Cisco, and then was VP VP product marketing at cybersecurity startups. And along the years, I've been, always in the interchange between tech and investing. This is my first, I would say, I'm always describe myself as I've dual life. This is my first life. My second life has more, I would say, more social, more social aspect of this life, social career. Was part of the founders of an NGO named Nova, which is McKinsey for NGO. And after that, I had I call it the right to serve as member of the Trachtenberg Committee in 2011. That was a committee established following the huge protest wiped out Israel. Approximately, I would say 5% of population protested at a certain point. So and I think it was always fascinating. It was fascinating from first tech, and also the ability to the Zionism of tech, the ability that tech fulfill the Zionism mission. So that's where I live, and this is why when people ask me today, what do you do? I always say I live in 2023, and I think that's and at a certain point I took a hobby of tech investing. I took it to be a profession. Found it fanciful. We established a hedge fund specialized in tech stocks. By the way, named Lucid Capital, but we have to say that this nothing we say here is going to be advice or endorsement or any recommendation of any stock. It's not any substitution to any tailored advisement, stock advisement you should get from professionals.
This is all friendly, unofficial,
and we're not
different stock.
Exactly. And I think the ability to analyze tech stocks or analyze growth or pre-IPO companies, both from the understanding the financial, understanding where they're going in terms of strategy. This is my background, and also and getting the implication on the Israeli ecosystem. I had this unique perspective of being able to see those triangles, and this is what brings us to this conversation.
And so one of the things that I really enjoyed reading in preparation for this is a sort of a thesis, of three main trends that you're observing, or three main things that need to happen or that are happening as part of this ecosystem that you've been thinking about over these last years. And so what I would love to do is I would love to sort of expand on each one of those separately for a few minutes and understand it a little bit better, because I think that it really is an interesting strategical thinking behind what's happening here and what we're observing, the madness of the tech industry in the scale-up nation.
Yeah, there is a 20 years old conversation in the Israeli ecosystem about how to increase the participation of the Israeli population in the tech ecosystem. Despite all the news and despite all the, what we like to think of ourselves as a startup nation, there is a glass ceiling in the number of employees that actually working in tech. It was hovering around 7%, 8%, and it's still around this number. It's like 9% of the workforce in Israel actually works in tech. And there is a 20 years old conversation. How can we make it 25%? Because that will, create a leapfrog in the GDP of Israel. That could get a leapfrog in the workforce education. That can take Israel to be one of the, in terms of GDP, maybe increase it to twofold. If you think about that. And this is like a very old-fashioned conversation, and always the answer is like, let's invest more in mathematics, studies. Let's have government funding for R&D, which is okay, which is right, but still, we didn't break the glass ceiling. It's still 9% for the, it doesn't cross the 10% for the last 20 years, despite the sparks and the funding and all things happens. And I think like any technology, like any 20 years old technology, we need also that, is ripe for disruption, like the on-prem versus the cloud. It's time also to debunk some myths in that conversation, and that's what I guess we're going to talk today.
So tell me a little bit about what you're thinking about.
Yeah. So let me ask you. I always when I meet with people and discuss this topic, I always ask them, what's the largest expenditure of a software tech company, a typical software, let's say Palo Alto, Wix, Fiverr, Monday. Take one of the Israeli unicorns. What's the biggest expenditure?
It must be their engineers.
So exactly, people always say engineers. And if you open, the financial report, and this is my job, I always was amazed that between engineering R&D is usually between 15 to 25, 30% of the expenditures. Most of the money expensed on sales and marketing and support. In Wix, it could be 60% of the revenue. Monday is close to 75% of the revenue. And it's not unique. By the way, it's not just Israeli companies. It's every SaaS company. Their largest expenditure, even Slack, think of Slack. It's 90% of the revenues are expensed on sales and marketing.
Wow.
And that's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Because you always think of them as a tech companies, but no, they are more like marketing companies. And the reason, by the way, is that the whole assumption that underlies the SaaS model is that it's very sticky. So once you acquire a customer, it will stay with you for the coming 5 years. And then you should invest currently in sales and marketing, because it's like land grab play where you basically acquire a customer and then it stays with you. And people tell me, okay, but you need to deduct the advertisement, the Facebook and Google. I say, okay, let's deduct it. It's like between 10 to 15% of the marketing expenses, you still get that the sales, marketing, and all go to market is much larger in terms of dollars, a budget from the overall revenue. Also, by the way, in terms of number of employees, in Wix, for instance, there you have 60%, more than 65% of employees that are not R&D, and I deduct for that point, the designer and the UX guys that counted within the R&D. In Monday, Monday, or take any or WalkMe, most of the employees, more than 60% of the employees, are not R&D. So, and that's not, and again, that's typical. I think that connects to the other myth that surrounds the Israeli ecosystem. Israelis cannot, or we cannot build large companies, right? But always the conversation is like, we wish we had 10 more checkpoints in Israel. But actually there are. Actually there are. If you look
just last month.
Exactly. JFrog, Wix, Fiverr, SentinelOne, Monday. All are like, between $4 billion to $10 billion market cap, growing like with, building campuses in Israel. Nobody's going, they're basically growing like big companies. Wix is now having its own building, its own campus, building a few kilometers north of Tel Aviv. And Fiverr, I guess, will follow. And that raises a question that what happened? With the Wix founder or the Fiverr founders are more Zionist or more capable than the last generation founders? I don't think so. The reason that Israel has managed to build in the last 5 years, and not just unicorn that sells $2 billion for Cisco for stuff, but real companies that employs thousands of employees, IPOing, and get the funding from the capital markets and keep growing and keep raising. And the reason, I believe, it's not like that the founders are more Zionist or more capable or have less, they have more long-term thinking. I don't believe that, because it's some structural change that happened in the global tech ecosystem. And this is the change is the ability to do go-to-market more remotely. So if you think of the Israeli tech ecosystem, 15 years ago, there was mainly like on-prem software, hardware, and telecom equipment. Those are, think of Amadox or Converse or even Checkpoint was mainly on-prem. So those are companies that needed to develop on the ground, go-to-market people that would go, and this is very hard to do.
Yeah,
and this is why when you get into a certain point, the companies prefer to be sold to Cisco, which has all the guys that play golf with the account manager, and that makes sense because Cisco both paid $500 million, and 1 year afterwards, every sales guy in Cisco can reach to the Indonesian IT guy in bank and sell. But the SaaS revolution enables you to do it remotely. You can, people inside sell, inside rape, acquire customers via Facebook and Google, and basically that change of the way of doing go to market, basically make or build the rationale for companies. Okay, we can continue growing without investing so much, or without need to grab every Cisco's account manager, without need to develop this in-depth relationship with the CIOs of the companies, let alone companies like JFrog or Elasticsearch, where their clients or or Monday, that they are growing bottom up. They don't go to the CIO and says, okay, this is what we can do. Let's sign, $1 billion and give you a 10% discount. It's like the DevOps guy download JFrog, install, and start deploy it. And then, after 6 months, the JFrog, sales guy just need to call to the CIO, tell him, hey, your employers are using our solution already. They already pay us. So let's make it, in a more structured way.
The whole idea of product-led growth, that's been growing over the last few years. I think it's And it's so amazing because it really speaks, if you're looking at behavioral economics and rationality, it really speaks to the value creation.
Exactly.
It's not about some C-level executive that alone believes something is happening. You're seeing the value creating from the ground up. And if there's real value, then it's going to scale up. And I think it's amazing. Now tell me a little bit about the low code and no code revolution and how that is shifting in the ecosystem.
Yeah. So just to nail the last point, what I'm saying is that the combination of the revolution in the way companies do go to market, the death of the salesperson, in a sense, not really, but in a sense, combined with the infrastructure companies need to build in order to expand, is mostly go to market people like campaign managers, UX guys, project managers, design guys, and customer success people, and those are jobs that can be created in Israel. And so you don't necessarily need to have anyone to be like a software engineer, going to work as a cyber expert at Checkpoint. It's okay if you take someone that is more operational and teach him the soft skills of tech, more language skills, German skills or German language or English or refine the accent and stuff. Teach him all the tools that need to be used in order to be great customer success guy or great campaign manager and all the best practices. And have them join not in salary of 50K NIS a month, what typical software engineer or seasoned software engineer gets, but 25K NIS per month, which is still 2.5 times the average salary in Israel. And I think that could be the way to break the glass ceiling. I'm not saying there is not the companies themselves do not have problem raising or getting talented software engineer. They have a problem, and they will struggle, and
that'll continue forever.
That'll continue forever. But this is not the key problem of the Israeli states. The Israeli government need to not and it's just if you add another 2,000 software engineer, it won't raise the bar. You want to have 50K people joining in sales, marketing, support position into Wix, Monday, Sentinel-1, whatever, JFrog and stuff. So that's to nail the point. And now getting to the next point about low code and no code. The other tech revolution that's currently happening, and Corona accelerated that very much, and it's that the low code, no code. Think of low code, no code as platforms like do-it-yourself or Wix for coding.
Yep.
And that stems exactly from what you mentioned. The pain to get software developer is universal. It's across the whole globe. This is why where there's so much pain, so someone develop a solution. So we have seen Microsoft, Salesforce, ServiceNow, as well as dedicated companies like Appian and stuff, develop what they call low code. It's like Wix for coding, which basically enables any business analyst that know how to do pivot table in Excel to design or to write an application, and a workflow application for embarking a customer in insurance in a bank, or claim management in insurance company, and that's mind-boggling, because now you can take people with relatively mild analytical skills. You don't need them to have to train them and to basically to train them for 1 year or 2 years to be like software engineer or cyber expert at Checkpoint. They can work as low-code developer or builders, where they can build software application without need to write even one line of code.
Amazing.
And that connects to the previous point. So now you can take all this biology or chemistry or all sciences, or also business analysts that, just economics graduate or business administration graduates, and teach them low-code, no-code. Don't put them there, but don't put the bar of being software engineer or researcher that solve a huge algorithmic or mathematical problem. It's okay if they will work maybe for a professional service company. It could be Israeli professional service company, or it could be like even like Infosys or Cognizant or Accenture, that they are really looking for low-code developers, but not just low-code developers for those companies. For every fintech company could use low-code developers to do all the integration with the legacy system.
100%.
So okay, there will be the what let's call them the talented software developers that do all the AI, the data scientists, the guys that do that solve the core algorithms of the business. But for all the gluing stuff, all the interfaces, low code is perfect.
It's perfect. And I think going over these three key ideas, which are obviously all very much interconnected, they're impacting each other. But overall, we're not just talking about making the Israeli tech ecosystem, but we're talking about making Israel better. And
exactly.
We're talking about greater problems for the world. And you're taking Israel, but then you can extrapolate this to every other country in the world, because obviously as the world moves forward, it's all going to be in tech, and there's no way around it. And countries have to either get with the program, or they'll fall further and further behind. And luckily, we're living in a city and a state and a country that is thinking critically through those programs. And I'm really excited that there are people like you that are sitting and they're actually thinking critically about this. But Shahar, I want to spend the last 2-3 minutes just going back a little bit and understand you a little bit better. Go back to your childhood for me.
Yeah.
Middle school. What really fascinates you? You mentioned you're a geek, but what really fascinates you?
Yeah. So I'm a bit ashamed to say, but then I basically participate in a support group, and I understood that my fascination, or the things that fascinate me is common to a lot of people. It's not. I shouldn't be ashamed of that. And that's I'm what is called in Hebrew mechorfan. I really love weather storms. So I'm a storm chaser.
You're a storm chaser.
So I think that I was fascinated.
Amazing.
And I was still fascinated by storms. And this is also I'm a geeky background. So this is the way. And you can in the most stormy day in Israel, I basically take a day off and go to the north and chasing thunderstorm and stuff. And I think that stayed with me.
Well, I think we're going to be doing another episode just on that. What inspires you today?
I believe that people that go against the wind.
Yeah.
Think of Guy Ronick, for instance, in Israel, that went against the what I would say concentration in the Israeli business climate 10 years ago, and to risk he could play the game and get some more advertising dollar to his newspaper, but he decided to go against the most powerful entities in Israel. And as well as, for instance, women that complain about sexual harassment against powerful people, I think that's always inspire me. The ability of people to do something that against their immediate interest for the sake of others, that inspires me.
I love it. And what are 3 words you would use to describe yourself?
Geek, for sure.
Geek.
I think. Curiosity. I think this is driver of I get energy from learning.
So geek and curiosity.
Yeah, I think geekness and curiosity. I think that's that I would describe myself.
Shahar, I really want to thank you for coming. This was amazing. Thank you for sharing part of your strategical thinking, and I'm sure that there's so much more that we didn't even get to uncover yet. And I think it sounds incredible. And I'm excited to continue this conversation and to explore more. This is what our country needs and the world needs. And this was a very exciting time for me. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael, for hosting me. It was a pleasure.